when you look at the polling data in depth, and pollsters reveal all the detailed questions. One of the things that strikes me is that support falls off rapidly when people are asked, if Mr. Trump were convicted of a felony, would you vote for him? And particularly among independents, people who are neither Republicans nor Democrats, the support drops away quite a bit. Now, one last thing I'd point out, I was the first person to note that a convicted felon serving time in a New York State prison can serve as president of the United States. Nothing in the U.S. Constitution would prohibit that.
Now, the jury in Donald Trump's criminal hush money trial has been dismissed for the day after deliberating for more than 4 hours. The panel of 12 New Yorkers will resume their deliberations tomorrow. The jurors sent 2 notes today, one requesting to rehear the judge's jury instructions and one asking to be read back some testimony from some of the key witnesses, Michael Cohen and David Pecker. The jury will determine whether Trump is guilty of 34 charges of falsifying business records relating to a hush money payment to the porn star before the 2016 presidential election. He's pleaded not guilty and even said today that Mother Teresa would struggle in his situation.
I would say, in listening to the charges from the judge, who's, as you know, very conflicted and corrupt, because of the confliction, very, very corrupt. Mother Teresa could not beat these charges. These charges are rigged. The whole thing is rigged. The whole country's a mess between the borders and fake elections, and you have a trial like this where the judge is so conflicted he can't breathe.
Well, David Cay Johnston is a journalist and author of It's Even Worse Than You Think, What the Trump Administration is Doing to America, and also The Making of Donald Trump. And he joins us now. Good evening, David.
Hello, Carol. Good to be with you again.
Yeah, really good to have you with us. A really crucial stage now, the jury off considering its verdicts. I mean, Donald Trump has been there and now he has to simply sit and wait, doesn't he?
Yes, under American law, a defendant must be present for every single second of the proceedings. So Trump's going to have to sit more where he's not in control. And that's for Donald, who I've known for 36 years, very difficult for Donald to not be in control.
Let's just remind people listening of the grounds for this case, because, of course, it is about those payments to Stormy Daniels. Donald Trump, of course, denies all the charges, but the prosecution have got to prove, haven't they, that the payments were there to stop her from talking about their sexual liaison, something that he has denied, but that the payments were there because Donald Trump was trying to conceal this in the run-up to the election in 2016.
Correct. The prosecution has established that the payments were made. They've introduced all the checks. The issue for the jury is, did Donald Trump direct this to corrupt the election results in New York? This is a New York State prosecution, not a federal prosecution. And the jury, after about 4.5 hours of deliberation, asked to have testimony from the first witness, David Pecker, who was the publisher of the supermarket tabloid, The National Enquirer, and then Michael Cohen, Donald Trump's attack dog lawyer, who was the last witness, to have certain testimony read about a meeting, particularly about a meeting in Trump Tower attended by David Pecker and Donald Trump, who are principals of their own companies, and then Michael Cohen, who was Donald Trump's agent.
And what do you make of the way this trial has unfolded? Because, I mean, there are flaws in the arguments on both the prosecution and defense cases, aren't there?
Well, there are. The defense doesn't have much to defend against, except to insist that there was no criminal intent here. Per se, there's nothing wrong with paying someone to keep quiet about something. The issue is, was he trying to corrupt the election in the process? And that's a matter for the jury to decide.
And clearly, we don't know what's in the jury's minds, but the key point in this is that they've got to reach a unanimous verdict, haven't they? And I wonder whether that helps Donald Trump's chances of getting off.
Well, Donald's principal hope would be that one or two jurors will uh, hold out and he'll get a hung jury, in which case they'd probably be tried again. I've actually written about a case of a young man who was tried 5 times because of hung juries and ultimately acquitted because I hunted down the real killer in that case. And so Donald's hope here is that he'll get a hung jury, which he will, of course, declare is a victory. But keep in mind that the action that's at issue here, the payments to Stormy Daniels, they took place right after the Hollywood Access tape came out, where Donald bragged about sexually assaulting women at will. And there were some Republicans calling for him to not be supported anymore and basically hand the vote over to Joe Biden. That was seen as so serious. So had the Stormy Daniels story come out, had she not been paid off, I think you can say with a great deal of confidence, I can say that Trump would have lost far worse than he did the popular vote.
And of course, there's been a huge focus on this. Not surprising, it's historic that it's even taking place, the first criminal trial of any president, either former or serving. And Donald Trump's familiar claim every day that he walks in and out of the court is that this is all politically motivated. And I mean, in a sense, he has a bit of a point, doesn't he? Because the jury, the court system, the justice system in the United States is not entirely independent in the way that it is here in the UK.
Oh, I don't think there's any reason to think that the system is not independent. This is a New York State charge brought by the elected district attorney from Manhattan, New York County.
He's
Uh,
elected, though. That's the point, isn't it?
yes, yes. We don't have appointed judges. We have elected judges, but they're in their own branch of the government. We have 3 branches of government: executive, legislative, and judicial. And this is a state charge. Now, it's not the charge that I think should have been brought. I've written about how it would have been much easier to convict Donald Trump on tax fraud charges. He was tried twice in the past for tax fraud. He was lost both cases. They were civil cases, not criminal, but the judges in those cases told him, don't fabricate the existence of a business and take deductions when there are none. So he was on notice, and that he did it 60 more times in just one 5-year period tells you that he met the standard of mens rea, or a criminal mind. But the DA chose, to bring this case instead. And we'll see. And it's going to take the jury, I think, several days, Carol, because they had more than 200 pieces of evidence and 22 witnesses, and 2 of the jurors are lawyers. They're going to probably make sure that they're very careful sifting of the evidence in court.
And what is extraordinary is that even as this case unfolds, and we've heard some extraordinary details revealed during the course of the evidence, it doesn't seem to be harming Donald Trump's prospects at the presidential election. Of course, it's kept him away from the campaign trail, which he complains about all the time. But the latest polls seem to suggest that he's actually ahead of Joe Biden in some of those key swing
Right.
states, which he has to win if he's going to win the presidential election. I mean, people listening to all of this from here in the UK will be amazed, perhaps, at that.
Well, Carol, Donald had a right to have this case tried last year. The reason it was delayed, and the other 3 cases are delayed, is his efforts to avoid going to trial. So he has no one but himself to blame for the fact that he spent these last few weeks. And if he really believes there's no chance he will be convicted and he's innocent, then he should have demanded an immediate trial. He was entitled to one within 70 days of the indictment. In this case would be history now, whatever its outcome. As for the support for Trump, when you look at the polling data in depth, and pollsters reveal all the detailed questions. One of the things that strikes me is that support falls off rapidly when people are asked, if Mr. Trump were convicted of a felony, would you vote for him? And particularly among independents, people who are neither Republicans nor Democrats, the support drops away quite a bit. Now, one last thing I'd point out, I was the first person to note that a convicted felon serving time in a New York State prison can serve as president of the United States. Nothing in the US Constitution would prohibit that. He just couldn't leave the prison.
That is really just an extraordinary prospect. But of course, we await the verdict of the jury. David Cay Johnston, journalist and author, so good to speak to you. Thanks very much indeed for joining us.